Bitcoin has been called many things: a scam, a ponzi, valueless, and so much more. Today I'm going to be investigating the skeptics' case for why Bitcoin is terrible and why they are wrong. The first argument comes down to that Bitcoin is not a currency. A bit of perspective is needed here because the concept of money is a damn tricky one. But essentially, Bitcoin does function as a medium of value exchange. But no one accepts Bitcoin. Well, that's not true. There are many businesses around the world which do accept Bitcoin, including some very large companies like some airlines. As well as that, some services are being developed that will help you as a business accept cryptocurrencies and get dollars straight away, thus avoiding that famous volatility of Bitcoin. There are further benefits for a merchant in accepting crypto. Of course, there are no chargebacks for the merchant. You also don't have to pay those large credit card fees to Visa and MasterCard, not to mention that you avoid the bank fees for depositing cash. But Bitcoin is not a real currency. What, like all the fiat? That fiat which is created from thin air and is constantly decreasing in purchasing power thanks to inflation. Is that what real currency is? Real currency that is loaned to the big banks by the central banks for next to nothing and given to you at inflated rates? Is this the definition of real money? But Bitcoin has no real value. And your dollars have value? Why? Many people, when talking about Bitcoin, reference the greater fool theory. The key thing that they miss in this conversation, though, is that if you're going to apply it to Bitcoin, this equally applies to fiat currency. Just imagine, if we didn't have money already, the ridiculousness of someone convincing you to take a piece of paper with a number written on it in exchange for your time or your services. And then you need to take that piece of paper with a number written on it to someone else to exchange it for something like food. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? The only reason that this piece of paper with a number written on it has any value in society is because someone else actually believes that that has value. This is why, at least part of the reason, why Bitcoin does have value. Because with fiat currencies, everyone is believing the group lie. Okay, but it's too volatile to be a currency. So then Zimbabwe didn't have a currency? Because Zimbabwean currency has been much more volatile than Bitcoin has been. And have we forgotten about how much inflation has actually hurt the purchasing power of the dollar over the past decades? Or is it okay simply because it happened slowly over time and not within the span of a week, for example? Bitcoin is going to go to zero. Well, it's never actually going to go to zero, even assuming that the market loses all interest in Bitcoin and that it is replaced by something else. Well, I'm still going to buy Bitcoin for a penny. But, newsflash, your fiat currency can also go to zero. Don't get too comfy in your bed of dollars, because the dollar, like many other fiat currencies, has massive issues. And at this point, there is so much investment into the Bitcoin ecosystem that the thought of Bitcoin simply going to zero is laughable. Bitcoin is not a store of value. Again, you need a bit of perspective on this. Bitcoin is highly fungible, highly transportable, highly secure, decentralized, and compared to a lot of currencies around the world is an efficient store of value in spite of the volatility. But Bitcoin is not a unit of account. A unit of account, of course, being when you walk into a store, you do not see bread priced in Satoshis. Well, they have us there. We haven't quite reached that point with Bitcoin yet, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some businesses doing that in the future. Transaction costs can be too damn high. Well, currently transaction costs are actually very low for Bitcoin, but back in December of 2017, we did see transaction costs hitting $50, $60, $70, $80. However, if you're transferring a lot of money, that can still be way cheaper than Western Union, because Bitcoin is not based on a percentage of the money you are sending. It is a set fee based on the amount of data and the busyness of the network. Not to mention, has anyone actually tried to go to a bank and to send money overseas from your bank? It takes hours and it's very, very expensive. Bitcoin is still a very attractive option. And if we talk about paying for a cup of coffee, well, they are working on solutions to make that even more probable. Bitcoin does not have enough transactions per second to be relevant. The scalability discussion is certainly an important one and is a weak point of Bitcoin in its current state. Because of the low amount of transactions per second, fees are likely to rise at periods of peak network interest, but they are working on scaling solutions every day, but they have not been fully rolled out yet. You can't trust the exchanges. Yeah, okay, but can you really trust your bank? Remember, exchanges are places to buy and to sell your Bitcoin. Do not keep your Bitcoin on an exchange. This is the equivalent of leaving your Bitcoin sitting in your wallet, putting on a public bench in a park or in a busy marketplace and walking away. You are your own bank with Bitcoin. You need to wrap your head around this idea. It is a crazy idea, but it is an awesome idea. Because seriously, do you actually trust your bank? The list of bank crimes against their own customers is so long and is so extensive that it is difficult to believe that anyone still has faith in these institutions. Yeah, but Lark, exchanges get hacked. Well, bank robberies also happen. And actually bank runs happen where people go to the bank and try and withdraw their money, but the bank doesn't have it. Not to mention that banks go out of business. Why have we as a society decided to give them so much trust? Bitcoin uses too much energy. Well, that is a valid criticism. Bitcoin does use a crazy amount of electricity, but it's important which electricity it is using. Bitcoin is largely mined with renewable energy and is particularly focused in areas where there is excess supply, places like central Russia where there's a low population but a high energy potential. Also, in this conversation, it's so often forgot, where is the criticism of the global monetary and banking system? Think about all of those data centers, all of that money printing, all of the mining to get the metal to print your coins, the transportation, the security for all of that. And don't even get me started about the global power consumption of the military industrial complex. It's absolutely crazy that the criticism for Bitcoin and energy consumption seems to be so big on many people's minds, considering the other implications. Bitcoin is going to fund terrorism, money laundering, human trafficking. People are going to use it to buy drugs. They're probably even going to use Bitcoin to hurt puppies. Well, you know what? Again, newsflash, dollars are already doing that in pounds and yen and euros. Money is money, and money will be used for good purposes and bad purposes. And right now, we even see a situation of the banks working with these criminal organizations to help launder the money. So why are we making Bitcoin guilty in this situation? Bitcoin was founded by the CIA. Okay, tinfoil hat moment here, guys. The creator of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto, does remain anonymous to this day, but that was a long time ago. And the reality is that a lot of the early coding was not even done by Satoshi, and that the coding now is being done by a group of public developers. Speaking of governments, Won't governments just shut Bitcoin down? Well, go talk to China. They really tried, but the over-the-counter market for Bitcoin in China absolutely exploded. Nevertheless, a global concerted effort by governments to crack down on Bitcoin would be very bad. But when Bitcoin is outlawed, only outlaws will own Bitcoin. And in that situation, I will be an outlaw. Bitcoin is a speculative bubble. Yeah, okay, but so are houses and bonds and gold. Markets overheat, and then those markets retrace. Get used to this, or get out of the game. Market manipulation exists in every market, and this is often used against Bitcoin, that the Bitcoin markets are manipulated, therefore Bitcoin must be bad and unsafe. Have you heard of Wall Street? Because they are the ultimate market manipulators. Speaking of Wall Street, Jamie Dimon and other big bankers, Nobel Prize winning economists, academics, top financial company executives have all come out saying that Bitcoin is bad. Seriously, who still trusts these clowns? But the media say bad things about Bitcoin, Lark. Please refer to my previous rebuttal because it applies just as much to the media. There are so many commentators who simply do not understand Bitcoin, and they comment on it anyway. And they comment on it from a position of either ignorance or dishonesty. And the comments that these people are making now about Bitcoin will live on like those people who famously doubted that the internet would ever be useful or that the car would replace horses. Bitcoin will be a similar scenario. Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme is defined as a form of fraud in which a purported businessman lures investors and pays profits to earlier investors using the funds obtained from newer investors. It's a really easy accusation to throw at Bitcoin, but Bitcoin does not fit this definition. It does not fit this narrative. Yeah, okay, but look, you can't use Bitcoin to pay your taxes, therefore it is invalid. Well, why would you want to use Bitcoin to pay your taxes? But if you do want to use Bitcoin to pay your taxes, there are actually some places that are now accepting Bitcoin for your tax burden. Okay, but Bitcoin's not secure, Lark. If I lose my private keys, that's it. I've lost my money. You know what that sounds a lot like? Cash. If you put $500 of cash in a public square, well, it's probably going to disappear and it's going to be gone forever. Same thing with your private keys. Big companies are never going to invest in Bitcoin without some kind of safety measures involved. Well, there have actually been really big moves in terms of custodianship services on offer for big institutions, as well as for the regular Joe, which is an important step as well. The big money guys are simply never going to get into Bitcoin without some serious adult financial instruments. Well, actually, we're already getting those too. Bitcoin futures already exist. The Bitcoin ETF already being worked on. The SEC has quite a few ETFs in front of them to make a decision on. Obviously, we're still waiting on approval for those at this time, but it is a question of when, not if. But Bitcoin doesn't act like a stock and pay dividends, so it can't be a real investment. We'll go tell that to gold investors. No one seems to question that gold doesn't pay a dividend. There is no use case for Bitcoin, and it is fundamentally not useful. Okay, seriously? Capital controls over fiat currency, frozen bank accounts, theft by cop, or in other words, civil asset forfeitures, international remittances, e-commerce, and the list goes on. There are so many use cases, it's crazy. Okay, but quantum computers are going to bring the whole thing down. If quantum computing is really a big concern of yours, then you should be looking to the banks before you look to Bitcoin, because with their centralized servers, they are prime targets for quantum computing hacking. Bitcoin is controlled by a small group of elite miners and mining pools. This is a legitimate concern, and the power of the companies like Bitmain have grown disproportionately. And the concentration of power in the hands of a few mining pools is not healthy for the overall Bitcoin ecosystem. There's no governance in Bitcoin. Coin holders have zero say on what happens. Owning Bitcoin does not give you any voting rights. This is a weak point of Bitcoin, and major companies can essentially push their agenda, or at least try to push their agenda, and when they don't get what they want, well, they go off and make Bitcoin Cash. They fork the code, of course. Let's add into this, when was the last time that you voted on the monetary policy of your government? Blockchain is cool, but Bitcoin is bad. For all the reasons you mentioned, Lark, Bitcoin is simply not going to work, in spite of all of your clever answers. Well, this is a narrative that is being pushed by central banks, corporations, and governments the world round who want to use blockchain technology for their own ends, and yet see Bitcoin as a threat to their power. Remember, governments need us. We don't need governments. And Bitcoin is part of the equation that can take that power away from them. Okay, Lark, but my alcoholic Uncle Steve has a friend who said he was scammed by that blockchain Coinbit thing one time, and okay, we're running out of arguments here, it seems. And you might have me there on your Uncle Steve. But nevertheless, it does remain that Bitcoin is fundamentally a revolution and an evolution in the way we understand money. It's deflationary. No one can tell you that you can't have a Bitcoin address. No one can stop you from sending it so long as you can access the internet. It is global, quick money. There are 7.5 billion people in the world and only 21 million Bitcoin. 20% of those may have already been lost. Just stop to think about that for the minute. For the foreseeable future, Bitcoin will remain king. There are already, though, a variety of different cryptocurrencies which are actually technically superior in terms of speed, scalability, fees, utility. But as Bitcoin continues to upgrade its software, it may very likely continue to reign supreme in the crypto ecosystem. But hey, those are just my 2 Satoshis on the state of Bitcoin. You'll let me know what you think about it down below in the comment section. Remember to thumbs up these videos and share these videos around the internet. Join the conversation over on Twitter or on Telegram. Long live the blockchain, and peace out till next time.